Okay, so now we're going to move on to our roundtable discussion. Of course, we have all of our outstanding presenters: Luke Weinhagen, Bryan Brey, Dr. Garrett Smith, Noah Revoy, and Brandon Hayes.
We're doing Positiva, right?
Yes. This is
We're not
this is the happy
black
happy
pilling
joy,
anymore.
Joy, make everybody feel good. part.
So the guys up here and a lot of the guys in the room, we spend a lot of time working on solving problems, but really helping people resolve their own problems. What that does is it gives us a perspective that most of the people that we're talking about today, most of the people that we're interacting with, most of the people that we run into that we have even conflict with, they're really not evil people. They're broken people. And it's really hard once you make that connection to be mad at a broken person, right? And so then we started investing in how do we fix that broken, right? So I look around, I don't see a hostile environment. I look around and see a very, very solvable problem because we know how to fix these broken pieces. None of us are doing all of it, but all of us can do all of it. We can fix the broken pieces. And we do that, we have a much smaller cohort of enemies to stand toe-to-toe with, right? So, I mean, even fixing the broken is part of resolving this conflict. But it's a very achievable goal because all we're doing is solving broken. We're not fighting against human nature. We're trying to restore it, right? And that makes our job a lot easier to do.
Yeah, well said. We have a tremendous amount of good people in the world, and I want to enforce or reinforce that. And yes, seeing others as broken, if they're broken, or a thing is seeing that they can be healed, and we have our piece that we could share with them and about playing our part. I do think there's a small percentage, but obviously, like Lucas said, this pond scum, 1% or less are evil. They're malevolent. They're out to harm. They know they're lying to manipulate. And a lot of this is this parental dad says that's enough. So what I want to emphasize with our group here, this esteemed group, is what I pick up on is that there's a real comfortable, natural, passionate, intense desire. We've learned something that's connected dots for us, and we really, as dads, want to share that so that we're sharing solutions because there is this real deep love that we have that we want to see people in their best. We want to see them healthy and happy and being able to have good relations with others and control or regulate their emotions and to think more true, accurate thoughts and to be able to falsify things so that they're not caught up in programming that's, NPC type behavior. And I love sharing my stuff. It was like a magnus opus when it happened for me, and I just got caught up in film theory, and it happened to connect a lot of dots for me. So I really thank you all for coming out and listening to my rants.
Okay, well, I know a lot of people when stuff gets into health, a lot of people get into the perfection. Well, they get into perfection. They think they have to be perfect. So if you were listening to any of the stuff that I was talking about, I always remind people, like, any step you take in the right direction is a positive step. So I just had a guy get rid of 99% of his dandruff. He got rid of tomatoes and peppers, and that was all he did. And he's like, my dandruff basically disappeared. And I was like, wow, home run, But anyway, just know that any of the steps. So if you see my stuff on Twitter or you start looking into it and you're going, I can't do all of that. I don't want to do all of that. Or it seems like people go through the program and they say it's too much. And I go, it's like eating the elephant. You just one bite. Any step you make in the right direction is a good one. So whether it's taking something out or whether it's adding something in, it's just move in the right direction and then things will get better over time. But I'll tell you one last thing, though. The thing that you think is the hardest to give up of the stuff I talk about is probably the thing that needs to go the most. So that's just the way it is.
When I was born, my parents gave me a name that meant the one who brings hope from the divine. And they gave me right there in the obstetrician right there in the hospital, the mission to bring the world hope. And when I take it from the divine, that's hope from truth, from logos. And most of my life, I would be reminded that I had this responsibility to bring people hope. And when I met Curt, found out about him online, I recognized that there was the opportunity to fulfill that mission and do something that would change the world for the better. I think we're at a real inflection point in history. And we'll look back on it the way we looked at the very short era of the famous Greek philosophers, or the changes in the founding of the United States of America. And we're going to look back on it and say, this is when we fixed these problems once and for all. And everything after that was different. To be a part of that is a real privilege. And I want to thank you all for being part of it and for creating something that no one else in the world is doing what we're doing. Yeah. And if you're listening to this, you can still get in on the ground floor.
Thank you, guys. And thank you, guys. This is, despite a lot of our rhetoric, an exercise of love. Fathers express love as discipline. Discipline at the civilizational level is law. Our law is our religion. Our law is our science. It informs how we move through this place. We have a very easy set of instructions that have 5 criteria that bind all of our actions. This is the easiest war we've ever had to win. All we have to do is start fighting.
I guess so. All right. Right. Yeah. Feel free to come up and ask questions. This is an open forum, open discussion. They gave me the mic, so I get to invite you guys all to join us.
So I think kind of the theme of this is, what's the future going to look like after we win?
Right.
So if each of you would kind of take what you consider your area of expertise or the subject that is kind of closest to you and tell us what your sort of where you feel like what a win would be or what the win would be, and then what it looks like after that.
Sure. And for me, they're actually a combined result. So my focus, the reason I got into the stuff that I got into is what is undermining cooperation, right? And the thing I came upon as I was exploring that topic was this quickly expanding dependence, right? And what I think that's doing is it's removing our capacity for reliance, right? And there's a distinction there that I make, right? When you're dependent, you don't, your existence requires that external, right? And when your existence requires that external, that means you have less to give, less to exchange, right? You're only consuming in that relationship. When you switch to reliance upon each other, that's a mutual exchange of value, right? Instead of a one-way exchange of value, right? And that as we become more and more dependent, we shrink our capacity for cooperation, right? We reduce that cooperation. It contracts. So the whole point of the work I do, the things I'm efforting to build, and what looks like a win for me is when each of us as individuals has restored our foundation of competence, where we can cooperate freely, where we can exchange that value in the form of reliance, right? All the positives that we think we're drawing from dependence right now ought to be drawn from reliance on each other, right? We exchange because it's valuable to exchange, not because I can't exist without you, right? That's a much stronger position for both of us to be on, right? And so that's what I look to when I start seeing more of that occur. When I start seeing choice as part of people's decision-making process. Right, they're not doing it because they have to. They're not doing it because they can't get by without it. They're doing it because they choose to, because that's important to them, because that's valuable to them, because it might be on that list of most important things. That's what I see as the win condition, and that's what I effort towards. And I think it's very, very accomplishable, right? And that doesn't have anything to do with the external, right? A lot of our work at the Institute is focused on the law and what externalities do we create to limit the bad, right? But my stuff is just all you. You can do this anytime. You don't have to wait for the government to change to be in a position where you're self-reliant, right? Where you aren't dependent on those externalities, right? So we can do that now. We can win that. I get to my win condition first because it has to be there for all the other win conditions to happen. So I picked the best spot to be in.
I love it. I think Luke's right on with the I. I'm going to probably go to the we, and I'm going to give you a vision a bit from where I left off with my presentation, which I think if we could do 10% to the feminine, finding their subconscious masculine that's going to go for logic and reason. And what I was hearing from Malia's presentation was that emotional container. So she was actually giving me a lot for my anima, for my subconscious feminine, of how I handle or can handle eros, relationship, and union, which I think the other 10% of our group, our men, should focus on that. And that, I think that will lead into a very hot topic for our men, which is family formation, finding a spouse, having children, and how that then becomes some form of a collective effort, meaning that guys are sharing recipes with each other in that sense of like, hey, this is what's working for me. I know Robert and I have had conversations about intergenerational wealth transfer and the best way to do that. So I think that's the we, that I think there's a lot of opportunity, just little, placeholders for the future. If you hear in I believe in cousin confederacies, and we can have family coins so we can compete with currencies that hate us and are engineered that way. And I want to put another flag that I do truly believe. So that was kind of like, here's religion, here's the trade. And then in terms of the state, these guys have the solutions in terms of the state. The 5 factors of natural law reciprocity. We really are about what has worked for Western civilization. And one more film theory thing, a big deal for the hero is it does come to a time and a place where the hero has to force their will on others. They have to force their will on others because they're not getting it, they're enemies to us, or whatever it is. But the hero at some points has to force their will. And I will tell you that the will that we're talking about is tied into natural law, and it is the most loving will that we could enforce. So I don't feel that anybody's going to have any bad repercussions with others or with even their creator when you enforce the right will. Because it shouldn't have retaliation cycles, because they were the enemy to us. We were mostly blind up here thinking like, hey, I love everybody, but they hate us. So we got to obviously have a policy that really makes sense across the board. We get concurrency, we get commonality. Now we have agreement, moral license, all that type of stuff. And watch the heroes bloom.
Okay, well, the future thing I think that's going on right now that I think is going to change a lot of stuff is some guys I know are already coming out with studies on, they're just destroying the science of virology. And I'm working on doing some studies on when they say vitamin A free things in the animal studies, which is what all vitamin A is based on, and we're going to destroy that too. So it's kind of taking down we're working, part of this is obviously working on the law. We're a bit further behind in kind of destroying the science, the corrupt and lying science of vitamins and stuff like that, and we can make nutrition much easier. It's actually a lot simpler. And then we can get industry, the food industry, to make sure that they have to put certain things in the soil, and that they're not putting things we don't want in the food, so that basically eating can be easier. And then we'll bring it around so that people will know why they're sick. Yeah. And they can then actively choose to do something about it or not. But no one can say, I'm sick because I'm a victim of this. They can take action, which is what we do with people all the time. So that's what I got.
We were certainly born in interesting times, and one of the challenges, I'm the very end of Generation X, is that We're a generation that were often raised by children, and so we have to parent our own parents and our children. So we have to expend a tremendous amount of energy, and sometimes even our neighbors and our siblings as well. And that's why I say this is the bounce generation. We're going to hit the bottom. Well, we're at our peak, and then we're going to go back up. It must go that way, and we're putting in the effort. And I see this in thousands of Gen Xers that I've talked to saying the same thing. I was raised by children. I'm going to make sure it's better for my kids. And it's very much like what Malia said earlier. I'm going to raise my kids good enough that they can raise their kids properly. And that's our goal. We don't have to fix everything now. We have to change the direction that we're going in so that it gets fixed in the very near future. That is a lot easier than thinking we have to solve every single problem.
My understanding of this place is that we actually live in a cosmic period of grace, and that we should be taking advantage of it, and we should have a gratitude for it, and that this place can sustain us for tens of thousands of years before we have to get off of it, and that aligning the globe behind getting off of it is probably the move. In fact, seeking a united globe before you have multi-planetary travel is in error, because we need multiple strategies here to make sure we survive on this rock first. What does a future look like when we win? I don't know what it looks like. You all do. But I know what it feels like. Secure and safe. Right? You can sleep a whole night. Right? Every stimulus doesn't prick you in a way where you are pulled into a loop of anxiety, where you feel like you need to address something with immediacy. We can live as slow as we want. We know the laws here. We have the opportunity to govern the entire planet the way we evolved to do. It's exactly what we evolved to do. Our brains are the most advanced thing that we can think of. It is up to us to order this place so that it favors us in ours through time. And if we are not, we are doing a grave disservice, not only to our own, but humanity, to life itself, if you'd like the bigger frame. So I have all the confidence in the world, because all you have to do is be good and punish people who are not.
Yeah, I like that.
Anybody got questions yet? Come up to the mic if you do. While I have got the microphone here, I just want to touch on something that I've touched upon in the past, but I want to reinforce it after today's conversation, the conversations after the last couple days. And I think a lot of us display it, but just one of the things that I think happens when we start stepping into that leadership role, when we start stepping into that perspective of this can be fixed, or it even helps us get into that perspective, is that shift from duty feeling like an obligation, right, to duty coming from a place of reverence, duty coming from our actual compassion, our care, our love of our people, of our families, of each other, right? So then it's not, I'm doing this because I have to, right? It's just that I have to do this, right? I'm moved to it because of my reverence for what's possible, what's coming, what's available to us as a future, right? It's not, my focus isn't about beat the bad guys. That's a step in the process of my expression of reverence. It's not the reason for the expression of my duty to me and mine, right? It is that future that I am revering, that I'm aiming myself at, that I'm aiming my family's efforts at, right? So the bad guys are just the speed bump.
Yeah, any questions? And if it's directed to somebody, certainly.
Yeah, I guess I'll get it started off. So this would be for Dr. Smith, because it's one of the areas that I'm least informed in. You mentioned about putting things back into the soil, and this is probably stuff that not many of us have really considered or thought about. What does a lot of that invigorating our food actually look like? I mean, you mentioned the soil. I know like a lot of vegetables and fruits and stuff used to be much different, and they were engineered to be totally different than what they originally were. What does that look like, reverse engineering, going back, the way they're more fibrous, more in line with the nutritional things that you've been able to discover?
Well, I'm not a soil scientist. I'm not an agriculturalist.
Soil, but just generally.
You are.
He is actually soil.
Well, I just wanted to go over some basic things that I think about. And so it's kind of like when you go to the store and you want to buy a certain fruit or vegetable. Like the way it works today with all of our dishonesty and corruption, all the farmer has to do is put something on the shelf. So as long as they can put the minimum nutrition in there to grow the plant, that's all they need to do. And so they can do other things for the flavor and all that stuff, but they're really, nobody really knows about nutrition. And so if they see, one apple is 50 cents and another apple's $1, most people are they're gonna be like, well, it's both an apple, so I'm just gonna buy the cheaper one. When there was reasons why it's cheaper. There's always reasons why it's cheaper, right? So it would just be, it's getting the corporations out of the mega growing. That's the big thing. That's because when all of us know, like you go to a farmer's market and you get something that's grown with care and good soil, and it does taste differently and it does taste better, and that's out of the stores. So then people don't have the choice because most people are going to stores, and they just take what's there. So in terms of how to fix that problem, I only, in my practice, a lot of people in the health industry, the alternative health industry, they talk about trace minerals and all of this stuff. Like you got to have all 72 minerals. And I always love to shoot that down right away because there's only 6 minerals I care about in people. So that means if let's say half those minerals, 72 minerals, let's say half of those are toxic. Some of them are radioactive. They're known toxic. The only way you get 72 minerals in something is if it's guaranteed there's toxic metals in there. So they're advertising as like, we have all the minerals. And I'm like, that means you have all the bad minerals too. Yeah. That's not what we're after, and not using, what are they using? Some they use like the sewage sludge or stuff as a fertilizer. And so that's just like, you can't do that. Well,
because it has so much antibiotics in it, they can't put it on fields anymore.
Oh, so it's gotten too bad from all the people. They're pissing and shitting out the antibiotics, and it's going into the water, and then it's getting into the soil, and you can't grow anything in it. So yeah, we're making it. The cycle is so toxic now that they can't even grow it with the stuff they used to. So that's the problem, is you keep concentrating the toxins over and over, and then it keeps growing on itself, and then stuff doesn't work. So in terms of how to fix that, like I said, I'm not an agriculturalist or a soil scientist, but there needs to be some sort of punishing of bad behavior in terms of growing, and then encouraging, where people understand that it's not just if you eat an apple, it's an apple. It's like there's actually stuff to it. There's things you want out of it that you can get more if it's better. You want to address something? Yeah.
I was just going to say one thing. If you live near an agricultural area, go out and talk to the farmers that are near you at the farmers market, and you will see that they have a genuine care and concern for the consumer that they see face to face. It's almost impossible to get someone to care about the corporation that they mass sell their food to, but they're going to naturally care when they're selling it to individuals. That alone changes the incentive, and you can do that right now. You don't have to wait for government changes.
I think actually Garrett got it correct. It's mostly to do with pricing structures, what you're paid for as a farmer and where that comes from, and then what determines quality standards. And that will vary depending on the crop you're growing. So a lot of it has to do with that, and like what will farmers put into the soil based off what the customer and how that relates to the prices. It does come down to the bottom line ultimately for fixing this problem. And there are brokerages and companies that do look at some of these more in-depth metrics that revolve around soil fertility and soil health. And they do have different programs. So like different brokerages, I grow hops. So for the brokerage that we sell to, they have soil health and soil tilth metrics that they evaluate as part of the part of who they will let talk to their customers, who will they introduce to their customers, who will they give preferential contracts to. And so they are starting to take account of some of those broader metrics. Now, hops as an actual plant, not actually a very healthy thing to be consuming. I'm gonna get fired if I keep talking, so anyway, it does come down to a lot of the problem is we're the minority who care about this, and there's not a large enough market. And so the farmers are just going to keep dumping nitrogen and creating what are basically cells and cell tissues inside of these plants that are just vacuous. They're mostly vacuole, which is a component inside of a cell, and they're empty. They don't have any actually nutrition to them. And that's what happens when you over concentrate nitrates into a plant. So that's largely what's happening.
You meant, and the reason that most people don't care is because we have not encouraged people to take responsibility for anything, least of all their health. And it's everything that we're doing is about responsibility and taking on of that responsibility. And that changes people's internal motivations, which is much more powerful even than changing the law.
Okay, question. So I wanted to pick up on something you said earlier, Luke, about getting people to respond to the incentives that come from this structure, and so that it's more like a marketplace of better options, so that people will just naturally cooperate. And I had a thought on that, but basically the thought was, if I knew what my peers are or friends are participating in, what's their skill, their competency, their market, their services, immediately I would that's my next engagement tier, like in all of this, is, hey, who can I support based on their competency? I mean, they've already aligned on my values, so how do I up my engagement into the next tier here? And if I know what's their market, what's their service, and I don't know how we catalog that or what, but that's what I'm interested in, is how to get into that next level.
Yeah. And it sounds like a lofty, goal or a lofty aim to say, I want every single dollar I spend to be spent in network. I don't believe it is all that lofty of a goal. My wife and I, our family, it's funny, our friends sometimes give us a hard time, but we've got a guy for just about everything. Right, we've got a meat guy. We go visit the animals that we slaughter and look them in the face. Right, the farm that we use, the ranch that we use, they invite all of their customers out to the ranch. We go visit the buffalo. Right, so I mean, we look our food in the face. we go find where it comes from. We've got guys for that. We've got the guys that help us out with the chiropractic stuff. We've got guys for all of those things. We intentionally build those kind of networks in our life. Right, so that we have.
And that's local?
That's local. But we do it with our external group too. Whenever possible, if I'm spending money, I'm looking at the guys in this room first. Yeah. If I don't have a guy in this room, I look locally.
So do we collect that anywhere? That's my question.
Right, and we're not doing a good job of collecting that right now. That's one of the efforts that we need somebody to take charge of. Right.
We know this effort, but are you saying we got a sucker?
Yeah. Right. But that, a lot of questions this weekend have been, how do I get involved in this conflict in a meaningful way? And it's stuff like that's open to a lot of, that's accessible steps that people can take. Right. It's making connections. It might be making phone calls. It might be sending the emails and just putting the spreadsheet together of who our guy is for that. We should have a database that we can all look to when we have I got to get this problem solved. What's my network solution? Is the start point. And then from there, if it's not solvable, we go find somebody we can relate to, and we bring them into the network. We don't just do the exchange, we do the network. We talked about pricing. I'm going to riff for a little bit. So we talked about pricing, but that pricing model comes from our unwillingness or inability to do the full accounting. We're not saying, what is the impact of this exchange on the war effort that we're in right now? We're not making that part of our calculation even. Or we're not even doing that part of our war footing. Right? We need to start doing that with all of our spending, with all of our buying, with all of our interactions. Right? Do the full accounting. Account for all of the costs of saving that 50 cents. Now, if that 50 cents costs you your child's future, did you really save 50 cents? Right?
Well, on that point,
Yeah.
I'm Mormon or LDS, and a lot of times what you'll see is a brother or sister.
Yeah.
We end up exchanging services at a discount, thinking that, and I think it's because of the feminine structure, right? It's oh well, we're related. Like you do this for me for free. But I think to your point, if we really understood the full accounting, we would be trying to make each other wealthy.
Right.
And account for the full cost of that future conflict that we're all preparing for. And start paying that a little bit now. And
in my exchange with you, I don't want to create an externality. That is irreciprocal.
Right.
I don't want you to discount me if it costs you. Yeah. Right. I want a good deal. I want your best value. I don't want you to shortchange yourself. I want to be supporting you, and I want you supporting me in the same way. Yeah. Right. I want us all to be lifted up by our spending, by our actions, by our activities. Right. I genuinely mean that. I want every dollar I spend. I want my internet service coming from one of our guys. I want to buy insurance from one of our guys. I want every dollar I spend to be in network. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think we should be aimed at that. Right. I mean, I think that's a good idea. That means our money's not going to our enemies. That's a good thing.
I think Garrett just has a few more minutes before he has to leave to the airport. So if you have a question for Garrett, you better ask it right now.
No?
One of the most important people in a community is the guy who knows a guy.
Yeah.
Be that guy. Don't wait for us to create a database. Be that guy so that when we want to create a database, there's 3 or 4 of you out there who already have it, and we just have to ask you to email it to us, and we'll correlate it. Let's move over a little so we can all sit close to each other and keep warm. Yeah, my wife, she's often that for all of her friends. Somebody needs somebody. She knows everybody because she's a wonderful networker. It's an incredibly important position to be in, and it is a leadership position, is to be the connection guy. In motorcycle gangs, they have a guy called the secretary. And when you want to contact someone in another group, you don't just phone him. You phone your secretary, phones his secretary to make introductions. So be the person in your local group that knows everybody. And that way, if I'm going to, pretty much any city in the world, well, in the Western world, I know somebody there. And if I'm going to go there, I phone them ahead of time, even if I have no plans on seeing them. Because if something bad happens, I'm going to want to know where they live. And I'm going to show up at their house. Or I'm going to want to phone them and go, I got run over by a car. Can you help me get to the airport? My legs are broken. Whatever it happens to be, know people. And here's the cool thing. That guy is my knows people in the area guy. So I'm going to send, and this has happened to me before. We've had some sort of a problem while I was traveling. I talked to my local contact, and I don't worry about it. He's going to go handle it. He's going to make sure I'm okay. And I do the same for anybody that's heading into the Portugal area.
I don't have to be the keeper. What you got?
Yeah, so this one I think is going to be for Bryan. Over the last year, I've been privy to several people's different plans for like local groups and different things, different plans. While we're on the justificationary, what the future looks like, maybe you could talk a little bit about the strong towns. I know the current suburban neighborhood style system was created by one of our enemies. Maybe talk about how the new system of building houses in a certain way and, having a shared garden or something like that could go.
Yeah. In 2021, I traveled across America looking for America's best big towns. I have a Twitter thread on it and posted a bunch of places. I really like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Franklin, Tennessee, and Greenville, South Carolina. I liked all of those locations because they had foot traffic, car traffic, and economic activity. They were also very beautiful, well-maintained. They had these aspects of what we say strong towns. what Strong Towns, as that organization, there's two things they figured out. Number one was to slow down car traffic coming through so they could actually have a safe downtown where people could mill about, walk, go into shops, stuff like that. The second thing they figured out is that the tax revenue per acre was much higher in the downtown area. And it was, loads more successful than any suburban sprawl, because the amount of utility and infrastructure that would need to be built out to deliver utilities to that just wasn't a return on that investment. They don't even get anything close to the tax revenue they need to even keep those things maintained. The corollary to that is we don't have European villages anymore, which is something that Eli and I were looking for. Those obviously are in Europe, of which you're benefiting from, where you have a highly homogeneous group. Probably most of your cousins or distant cousins live there. So the level of relatedness is very high. I like to talk about three frames. You have genetics, geography, and grammar fields. As a grammar field, we all have very similar grammar fields. That's why we're drawn to this work. We don't have similar genetics, and we don't live in the same area. For these European villages, they have all three over each other, but sometimes their grammar field works against them or didn't protect them from attacks that they weren't paying attention to or what have you. But these are still great places to potentially get to. I also think there could be a great sorting in America via genetics or AI phenotype and genotype matching, where then you are encouraged to go live near your relatives, and then you can make a better impact of grammar fields, of which I think our group could probably help the others at least discuss things, and then you can have a competition of the ideas and certainly see what wins. So, big fan of Strong Towns. I think it's part of the vision of the future, and so either build it or get to it. And again, thanks to the Pacific Northwest guys, their early role models and the application of things. I think they are building the predecessors to Strong Towns out here. They already have great, commitment and brotherhood, which I think is going to be undefeatable. And that's what you want to look for, is undefeatable men.
Yeah, so we've done something out here kind of based off natural law. After we met in Richmond, we got together as a group of us, kind of riding the wave of the energy that came out of that event and trying to figure out what to do with these guys who are both, understanding of this type of material, which is the people in this room, and then also incentivized to act, because we were dealing with COVID at that time and everybody thought the world was ending. So trying to figure out what we were going to do about that. And we kind of figured we needed to start somewhere very practical and a lot more humble than ideas discussed up to that point. And we're like, we basically just need to be getting together as men, doing things that men need done and need to know how to do. A lot of stuff kind of along the lines of what Luke talks about, but maybe slightly not starting at quite first principles, but pretty close. And we came up with an idea, which was the work party, and that was part of I'll leave their names out of it, but the idea was that we would just get guys together and get them working on things together, almost like workshops, and then in the evenings we'd go out and have a good time or go have some fun. So we would both work and party, get to know each other, do the around the fire thing, but also not be getting together just to do that, because there are a lot of groups like ours out there, maybe not quite as intelligent, but that are spending way too much time going to the bar, drinking, just trying to commiserate together effectively. And I didn't want that, because I'd seen that model happen. So I wanted it something that's produces something, leads to something that's valuable that we need, which is men who have actual skills and know how to do things and get things done, which is a form of hard power. So we started doing that, and we tried to build as many natural law ethics and principles into it as we could. The big one being reciprocity, reciprocal exchange. So if we're going to show up for you at your place of business and help you or your home or your family or whatever it is and teach you how to do things, and we're going to show up as a group of 10 of us and do that, we expect that you're going to participate and reciprocate and do the same for us, for other guys in the group, and start where people have needs and just circulate until we've met everyone's needs in the group. Ultimately, the goal was to try to free up both time and money, which after Richmond I figured was a pretty big thing we didn't have as a group. There was a lot of guys who didn't show up to that event because they didn't have the funds to get there, or they couldn't get the time off. And so, and those two things, money being a store of time, that's a big reason to target that specifically. So we started intentionally doing that as a group, and it's been about 3 years now, and we've slowly escalated the size of our projects. Each time the goal is to grow it in size. We try to 10x it. So if we're starting with building a wall on this first one, fixing up somebody's interior structure at their business, doing a door, putting in a window, whatever it was. Eventually, next time, okay, let's redo their entire home, finish a basement, get a renter in here, get some side income coming in for them. Okay, this one's a foreclosure, let's completely redo this entire thing. Okay, somebody has a house that's about to get literally condemned and torn off the hillside. Let's just completely gut this thing, rent it out, and then get that income. And the goal is to start to build this little miniature war chest in our own way and start to stack that up. So we've been able to do that, and eventually it led to us putting in a bar and restaurant over in Idaho, along with an entertainment facility to go with it. So that led, and that was all based around our guys and who was demonstrating they were putting in the most work and then had the disposable time and income to participate in that. So it's just about scaling up and starting small and just stacking and rolling your wins, similar to the debt snowball idea you brought up earlier, but instead of a debt snowball, it's a capitalization snowball. So, yeah.
You mentioned something very important. You said, well, this way we didn't just sit around and commiserate over beers. Men who sit around, and I call it kvetching for particular reasons, you sit around and doing that, it effeminizes you. And it does not create bonds between men. Male bonding hormone is released when men do productive work together that is sufficiently difficult that there's some suffering involved. And that's how we build trust. So you guys have the exact perfect model for building trust between men, and we want to build that now.
Preferably yesterday, but yeah.
Yeah, preferably yesterday. One of the things I absolutely love about your guys' project is, in addition to all of the tangible benefits you're describing, you're teaching your whole group how to win. Right? Each of these small things is teaching everybody involved what winning looks like. Right? You guys don't have to go, we have to win the whole thing or we lose. You're winning each one of these steps, and you're developing a greater capacity for winning when you take each of these steps, and you're demonstrating that it works.
Yeah, and the steps were largely at the beginning while we were building that trust. The steps are isolated,
right?
Meaning it has a very definite beginning and end, right? Because like you've talked about, trust is built through expectations being met over time.
Yes.
You have to give these isolated examples to stack these events where someone can show up and demonstrate that they can be trustworthy. And so it's starting at that small thing, we're going to begin this and end it in this weekend. And there's not going to be any further entailing things because I don't know if I can trust you yet. You talk like I can trust you, but I can't actually trust you until I've seen that demonstrated buy-in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So. And you're doing it. You guys are doing a great job of demonstrating the evolution of your goals as you find success, as success comes out of your projects. Right. You're not just stopping because you got that success point. Right, that success point is continuously leading to a bigger and greater success point, and you're really executing that really efficiently and really effectively. So I really appreciate the model you guys are making available for the rest of us to follow. So
let's see if Brandon has something. You have something to add for the guys of the Pacific Northwest?
Other than I love them immensely. No, they're ahead. Keep doing what you're doing. Drag the rest of our guys too. By the neck if you got it. By the neck if you got it.
Kicking and screaming, right? Is that what Curt says?
Yeah. Till they can walk beside you, right? Drag them. Right? They're yours. No, great work. I just am grateful. Thank you.
So if you don't have a group like that and you don't have any of us near you and you're thinking what to do, ask yourself, if the power was out and the water was out and the police weren't coming, what's the nearest man you'd go in contact to say, hey, we need to work together? Do it now. Contact him now. Go talk to him. Tell him, hey, I'm going to get to know you better. I'm looking to make friends. People keep asking me, how do I make friends? And I'm like, you walk up to a person and you go, would you like to be my friend? And then you engage you socialize with them and you do stuff with them and you offer to help them. And here's a big one people forget. Ask other people for help. Ask people for help that is within their scope, that won't take them too much, and is not a big sacrifice, because then they feel obligated to allow you to reciprocate. Whereas if you offer, they will feel reluctant to get into debt with someone they don't know. And so do it the other way around. Ask their help.
So question, Tyler's got the group set up, it's evolving, it's growing. How is the NLI Institute going to connect up, with hopefully future groups that Tyler's working with? We're starting one in Kentucky, just getting it off the ground, trying to learn from them, mimic that. How do you see the groups connecting up with the Natural Law Institute, and what does that look like? That's where I don't know that you guys have reviewed it in too much detail, but just wanted to ask that question.
Working groups are small communities, right? Like an army of people who can get things done. When you start linking them together, what you want is liability, insurance, right? So these overarching functions are what we can start to build as the Institute. So what we can do is link people together. And once you have a set of projects underway, especially things like revamping people's houses and creating rental properties and things like that are tangible, and they produce returns on time and value, and they bring your people into proximity with you, because if they're not around you, you can't do anything with them, and they can't service you in an emergency. So whatever means affords us to gift as much agency as possible, as much options for our people as possible, that's what we're going to do. So eventually, you guys have enough work groups. We should be able to have what they call them, a journeyman. Like people who have skills, who move from work group, lending their expertise, right, on the jobs that they're doing. And this is the type of, this can lead to the speciation that we want. Because if you build a place where people can be and have community, people will come to live around you, right? And if you're doing if you're filtering them, like we teach people to filter them, right? And if you're stewarding them into being able to be reciprocal with you, because most people cannot, right? You have to raise children into peerage. Then we're gonna win, right? No, what everyone else does is devolutionary, and right now everyone is moving around the social groups that continually collapse, extracting what they can for dollars, as the dollar is going to decrease, right, in price. So as time goes on and things get more chaotic, your dollar is worth less. Plus, it's going to be worth less through time. So we're busy collecting all the other capital that matters, right? We have all the explanatory power. We have all the trust. Funds come easily after that. Right? Get people involved, and you guys are going to be just fine. As soon as we can offer for Malia's point, you can offer a space for women. A lot of people, we deal in men because we deal in violence. And I don't reach out to women to come to these conferences because I don't think they're appropriate, honestly. What I like about what we're doing is once you have a set of men that can act in a group in a coherent fashion, women come along and you get to choose. Right. I hope that I get that across to the young guys, because you guys are way ahead of the game. You got in your 20s, you guys are way ahead of the game, right? Build your assets up. People will come to you for them. You have all the expertise, right? And you have all the tools and the methodology to make sure that what you're doing is ever adaptive.
Brandon mentioned insurance and the mutual support that comes from the larger group. And as you lead these smaller groups, there are tremendous benefits, but there are also a cost to you. Leadership is emotionally costful. It's draining, especially if you don't know how to deal with the emotions of leadership, or you don't have some of the skills and you're busy building them. And we want to make sure that we're here to support leaders that are feeling that burden of leadership, or the activists that we have working with that are feeling that burden, so that they know they can come and ask for help rather than taking any kind of drastic measures, which means we don't see them at the next event.
I think Brandon just has some closing comments to finish the conference. So if there's any more questions, we'd take, I think, 2 more. Other than that, we could go through any concluding remarks.
I just say on Noah's point, I appreciate your guys' patience on that because I do struggle with some of that, and you guys have been patient with me when I'm losing my shit. So thank you.
Reach out anytime you can.
Do we want to do concluding remarks from us, or we're
I'm
good?
happy.
We're good. Okay. You comfortable and good?
Whatever works. You guys good?
You guys good? We're here for you.
There is no conclusion. It's just
Right.
until next time.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
To the stand.
Got to record it.
So if I know of a gentleman that would like to be involved in this type of work, whom would I direct them to?
I like personal connections. I know that some people will send a website or what have you, but sometimes people will go to a website and they'll have their own, or they'll then search and then they'll try to pick up whatever article has been posted there to try to defame us. We know character destruction is their most, that's their hammer, and everything's a nail, it seems like. So I would try to connect them personally of who you think might have a common interest or something. And and then to have them
Give him my card.
Yeah, it's such a warm way to introduce, and then you'll see where the conversation leads, and then Luke can do the next filtering stage. Well, I personally thank you. It's usually a challenge and a struggle to go through the presentations and make the dumb slides and all the things, but what comes of it is part of that, the beauty of the struggle and that connection. And I hope I got you all this weekend, that you do have this feminine subconscious that's really running a lot of things for you. And I hope you understand that she loves you and she wants you to have the most wonderful, loving relationships and union, and she wants you to have a fantastic sex life. So make sure that your subconscious is saying and repeating the things to you that reinforce that for you, right? So she is your container for all of that, and that's a big deal. And then also know that the women that you communicate with, so you're going to stop projecting onto women, which, if I can finish with one thing here, we started with the pathological feminine, but I do hope the arc has landed, that you understand that that pathology is compulsive from believing her own lies. And part of the reason that she exists and that we hate her is because that's the shadow that we haven't integrated in ourselves. So that pathological feminine that we yell about and all that and have some difficulty is first resolve that shadow within yourself of your own subconscious, and then understand that struggle and fight is happening for women because they think they have, at least from their psychology, they also have an internal shadow masculine who is the evil patriarchy, evil white man, and all the things that consensus has been programming her subconscious. And I especially want to thank the women who have shown up today that they have been doing the work, or have done the work, or have seen the fruits of it, want to know more. They're tied into Logos and Reason. I think they're drawn to this work for all the right reasons. And know from my heart, you can reach out anytime. If I can be of support, if you have a friend or somebody you want me to talk to, or if you like my ideas and you want me to expand on something or whatever, I'll do the heavy lifting and make some more slides for you.
Not to plug this, but for some of the guys who are here who don't know, I host an online Zoom tavern that I think some of you know. I know Noah, Bryan, Brandon, Josh. We have a lot of people who have been in it. Some of you have not. It's also just a way of continuing the camaraderie that has been established during these conferences, because I live in Hawaii, so there's no way I'm going to have the ability to have a local interaction with any of you for the next 6 to 8 months. And so join if you want. There's people in here who know the links to it, but it's just another way to reach out to people if you have to unpack yourself to, it's a tavern. It's not a conference, it's a tavern. It's just a place where you can talk to guys, So anyways.
Just real quick to finish up from my perspective, the conflict is being engaged in ways that we don't traditionally recognize as conflict, right? If the bad guys were coming at us with rifles, we would know what our tool should look like, right? So one of the things that we're trying to do as a group is give you tools to use to engage in this conflict. Right? And that can be hard to see if you don't even recognize what the conflict is or what the conflict looks like. It can be really hard to see what the tool looks like. Right? So what we're hoping to do with a lot of this stuff is as we more clearly define what the conflict looks like, you can see the tools that we're offering more clearly. Right? And that's going to continue to happen. That's one of the things that we're efforting towards at the Institute, is just to keep being a tool provider as well. So you guys can effectively engage in your own self-interest in the conflicts that we're being confronted with. All right, so that's another way that we're going to keep developing and keep trying to interact with the community. So.
Yeah, and that's an important point. Is you say keeps getting more clear, and what we're doing is incredibly complex. And if you didn't understand it all, that's normal. That's to be expected. Keep paying attention, and all the parts you need to know will become clear to you.
Good.
I think we're done.
Thank you, guys.